You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show.
The 70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Cris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the Rite Retirement Show.
Hi there. I'm Luann Fulmer. Welcome to our show, the Rite Retirement Show, with certified financial planner and financial advisor Graham Bauer, here today to give you helpful advice about retirement planning. Here's the way to reach out to our team at WG Financial Group, 256-937-2010. Remember, this is a complimentary visit. Now, you can call the number or you can text the word visit if you prefer texting. 256-937-2010. Call or text the word visit. And then remember, you can check us out on Facebook throughout the week. Just search for WG Financial Group 256. And Cris adds anything to, other than what we've discussed on the radio show. If there's anything changing with the headlines, he will put that on the Facebook page and update that. Remember, our motto, too, is plan, retire, and play. We always love to tell you how you can do that and give you some really good ideas. Find us online at WGFinancialGroup.com. And this show is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search for the name of our show, The Rite Retirement Show. Graham, I'm excited to be here with you today. Hello.
Hey, Luann. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's been a crazy couple of weeks in a lot of ways, and I know Cris and I have kind of been flip-flopping back and forth on being here. I don't think we've been here in the same time a little bit now.
It's been, I think, 3 weeks now. Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on.
That's okay.
But we were talking pre-show. Got hit and had a totaled car a couple weeks ago, and then we were out of town for a couple days last week, and my sister got married.
I didn't even know that. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was super exciting. It was great to get everybody together in the same place. Got to see a lot of extended family that I haven't seen in a while.
Since your wedding.
Yeah, basically. And, well, we didn't have quite as formal of a whole shindig wedding like they did, which was great. So yeah, everybody kind of came into town, and that was great. Obviously, what I do is there's a lot of planning in that, financial planning, retirement planning, all that, but wedding planning, that's a different animal.
Yes, it is a different animal, all taking place on one day, basically. Yeah. It's a big day.
There's so much to coordinate. And I know, as I talk to my parents, because obviously, mother and father of the bride, quite a lot to do for that wedding. And that's, the last one in our family. So got to pull out all the stops. So that's been just kind of all consuming. So it's been fun now that that's all done too.
Yeah, right.
They can take a breather, and me and Emma helped out a lot. We can kind of take a breather. So
that's a big deal in a family. It really is. But what a fun time. What a wonderful family occasion.
Yeah, no, it was great, but I'm glad to be back in the swing of things. We don't have anything too crazy on the horizon. So
good.
Cross your fingers, no more car wrecks or anything.
Yeah, no,
like that.
We don't want that. I'm terribly sorry you totaled your car. That is no fun when you have to deal with the aftermath of insurance and buying a new car and all that. But I'm thankful you're okay.
Yeah, that's the important thing. It wasn't too bad, but like I've been saying, more inconvenient than anything.
Mm-hmm.
If when you're getting a minor crash that wasn't your fault, it's like, okay, now I just got to deal with insurance and all yada yada yada. So
exactly.
I'm sure people listening have most people have been there before.
Yeah, right. And I will say, last week, same week as you, my daughter had a little fender bender as well. She was all right. She had the baby in the car, but they were fine.
Oh.
It was one of those that were a third car back, hit the car in front, and then that car hit her. So the one in the middle is the one that got it. So yeah, it must have been a week last week.
Yeah. No, be careful I'm sure a lot of people are driving while they're listening to this. Be careful on the road,
right.
guys.
Pay attention to where you're going, please. Yeah.
People come out of nowhere sometimes.
That's right. They do. All right. Well, let's get into our market update. Tell us what you guys are seeing, please.
Yeah, so this was a really interesting week for the market at the time of recording this. So I was out of town the last couple of days of last week, and we were kind of out hiking. Wasn't within reach of cell service, so I didn't see some of the headlines until kind of I was in the airport on my way back and everything. But obviously Friday, last week, Friday, which was the 8th or the 9th.
What would that be? I think it was, it would have been, I got to do my math here.
We should
it'd be the 10th, I think. I think it was the 10th.
The 10th. Yeah. Okay. The 10th. See, I'm still got vacation brain
Yes.
here.
Yes.
The 10th, there was, a nice little drop, single day drop in the market, not even the biggest one we've seen this year. But it was due to very similar reasons as we've seen this year, which was the trade war kind of threatening to ramp up again. China had put some new restrictions on rare earth minerals, which, we really the refined rare earth minerals, which they're incredibly good at refining for, I guess, just better than we're able to do it in the U.S. at this point. I'm sure we'll innovate that over time. Yeah. But it's something very important to our economy right now. A lot of technology kind of runs through that. Trump kind of threatened some retaliation tariffs that would go into effect in November. And if we've learned anything this year about the markets, is that they really don't love the idea specifically of a trade war with China. And that's kind of what was getting teased a little bit again. Some of that has seemed to maybe already cool down just a little bit. We haven't, continued in any kind of crazy downward trend. In fact, we're kind of mostly back to where it was pre that little dip there a couple days ago. Good. So I don't think it's cause for people to necessarily freak out. Obviously, government shutdowns, people sometimes freak out. Those don't typically lead to a ton of movements in the markets either way. And it kind of hasn't really this time either. And I would say that the only big thing about that, and I'm sure Chris hit on this last week, but we're not getting jobs reports right now from the BLS. So there was supposed to be one, I believe, maybe on the 10th or the week before. I can't remember which Friday, but we were supposed to get a jobs report. It did not come out because, government is shut down right now. Yeah. So we're not getting all of the data that we would otherwise be getting. Regardless of that, the Fed meeting is still set to take place here in a couple weeks. Right now, the futures are very much looking like we're going to see an interest rate cut. So a lot of stuff going on. You can't say that it is not an interesting time to be watching the economy from a lot of different angles. And I don't really know where it's all headed at this point until we start to get some of that data and see what happens with these tariffs. But it's definitely been an eventful week.
It really has been. I mean, if you think about it, with all the peace talks and everything, oh my gosh, just so many things going on around us when you turn on that news. Okay, let's talk about a real talk. What have you found for us this week?
So I told Luann pre-show, I wanted to kind of flip how we usually do this because, the video that I saw was, and I've actually seen a few very similar to this. It kind of goes hand in hand with the market update. So I saw a couple of videos last week, around that Friday timeline when there was that single day drop, of talking about, the market's falling and yada, yada, yada. And, it is true that a couple percentage point drop, a couple 100 basis points is not nothing to write home about. But I guess just the way that some people I saw online were framing things just felt very kind of fear-mongering-ish to me. Specifically, I saw a few things comparing to like historical crashes using dollar amounts of like market cap versus percentages, which if you know anything about, where the stock market is today versus 15, 20, 25, 30 years ago, the market cap, meaning, the trillions of dollars market cap, is much higher than it was in 2008 and 2001, in the 80s, 70s. There's, been a lot of growth, a lot of money flowing in there, inflation, all that good stuff. So I just feel like, framing something as, oh, well, we saw the largest dollar amount drop that we've seen in, it would really that we've been seen since like April, but comparing it to say, 2008 or something like that. It's like, okay, yeah, that's true on a dollar amount standpoint. But if we look at the percentages, that was like 7, 8, 9% in 2008. And it's like 1.5%, 2%.
So how is that a difference? They're not comparing apples to apples?
Well, so if you think about it, if I don't have all these numbers off the top of my head, but let's just say like 50 trillion market cap on, an index, and that drops by 1%. Or we'll say 10% just to make numbers easy. Okay. So that's like 5 trillion. Obviously, that'd be a huge single day drop.
That would be.
But if you compared that to the market cap of the same index, let's say 15 years ago when it was only 25 trillion, now all of a sudden that would have been a 20% drop. So if you kind of do it the opposite way, you could say, oh yeah, we saw a 2% drop. That's equivalent to X amount of trillions of dollars, which is the same amount that happened here.
Okay.
But if you're looking at, I just think it's kind of a misleading way.
It is misleading. Yeah, I get it.
To look at, what is actually happening. Because again, as numbers get larger, small percentage points look a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like that's not a lot of money. That's a crazy amount of money. But at the same time, you kind of have to look at it in the context of the market cap overall, and just not frame it like we're literally hitting 2008 again just because we had one negative day. Yeah. So I think you just got to be careful kind of what you're looking at. That's obviously why we do this, what you're watching, just to not try and not fall into this really, over the top kind of, I'm losing the word right now, but just over exaggerated kind of view of everything going on. So I I just wanted to touch on that because I saw like 2 or 3 things that were really similar to that. And, I feel like to somebody just watching this that was maybe a little bit nervous, it could just be cause for way more concern than might be needed.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And, like we always need to do, look at the context. So in both cases here, a lot of times people will take things that people say out of context too. So yeah, we always have to look at things in context. Okay, let's move on then, if you're okay with that, to the Federal Minute next.
Yeah, and again, this all, it's kind of tying in today. So obviously the big thing right now is the government shutdown. That's, still in full swing, and it's affecting federal employees differently, I would say, in the Alabama area. We have a lot of people that are still working a little bit, a lot of people that are not working at all. And, it's a scary time for federal employees. Also, there was quite a lot of layoffs planned. I don't believe, from what I read, most of the layoffs were targeting a lot of organizations that are very large here. I saw like HHS had a lot of them, and maybe BLS too. There are a few of those that I'm not aware of having a super large presence in Alabama, but it's still definitely a bit of a scary time for that. So that's kind of the big thing going on. In the midst of that, another headline that I saw is, and this is kind of looking forward into next year, looking at the healthcare cost raises for federal employees, and this affects postal workers as well, for their FEHB premiums. So over the last few years, FEHB, which is still great insurance, and I'm not saying any of this obviously to advocate you don't use it because it's great, but it has risen a lot in cost in the last few years. So looking forward to next year, right now, the projections are, based on the numbers that have come out, that federal employees and retired federal employees will pay an average of 12.3% more towards their health insurance than they did this year. So for still working federal employees, that might not be quite as big of a deal. But for retired federal employees, that's a decent little increase on your FEHB that you've carried with you into retirement, especially for that pre-retiree, pre-Medicare employee. So I think it's just good to make sure, obviously, that, if you're currently retired, going to retire a federal employee, you kind of understand all the healthcare costs. There's a few different routes people can go that we discuss. Typically, the most common thing is just kind of holding on to that FEHB, using it as your supplement for Medicare. That's very common, but it's not always a one size fits all. So just wanted to mention that. But, obviously, as the government is literally shut down, there's not a ton of stuff happening for federal employees. They probably wish there was a little bit more, going back to work. But I'm sure that will, happen hopefully pretty soon.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you so much for that Federal Minute. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. You're listening to the Rite Retirement Show. Today with Graham Bauer, Cris Wallace, normally here as well. He's president of the firm, not with us today, but Graham Bauer is here. And, he is a huge contributor at the firm. He is a certified financial planner as well. And then also he is a financial advisor and an enrolled agent at the firm. So they are here to guide you about your retirement. There's other advisors there too that are certified financial planners at WG Financial Group. So the phone number is 256-937-2010. You can call the number or text the word visit if you have questions about anything that we discussed today on our show. They would love to help you out. So, okay, I want to get into the fact that, so Graham, I know you wanted to get into the inflation adjustment numbers that just came out for our tax brackets that was just released. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so, this will be a little bit of a shorter thing, just to kind of give people a little update here, because I don't think everyone wants to hear me just totally rattle off numbers. But the IRS came out kind of with the first round of inflation adjustments for a lot of the tax brackets and some of the tax credits as well, looking forward to 2026. So obviously, we know, we've talked about it a pretty good bit on this show, especially in the last few months, that the tax brackets are going to be staying the same as in the 12, the 22, 24, 32,
Excellent.
35, 37.
Okay.
So that's not changing.
Mhm.
That was obviously probably the biggest part of the OBBB legislation that passed a couple of months ago. But every single year, pretty much every single year, the IRS is going to inflation adjust some of the tax brackets. So not the percentages, but the dollar amounts that kind of, push you into the next brackets. So some of those came out for this year. That it's not a massive inflation adjustment. But I think why it is important to kind of understand is you have a lot of retirees who are on, I would say, relatively fixed income. And, if you're on pension, that's most likely a fixed income unless it's like federal. And then Social Security is not a totally fixed income. You have cost of living adjustment, but it's not always, going to keep up one for one kind of with inflation. So I think it is important to understand, where the brackets are, because one year over another, there's a good chance if your income is staying relatively the same, you might owe a little bit less in taxes than you did the previous year. In addition to that, usually the standard deduction sees a little bit of an increase as well. So it did for next year also. So the standard deduction for a married couple right now, I believe, is $31,500. It's going up by about $700 next year. So not a crazy amount, but a little bit. And then I believe the senior deduction is raising a little bit as well. So if you're someone over age 65 and you make, your adjusted gross income or modified adjusted is less than $150,000, your standard deduction next year with the normal standard, the age 65 that we've had for a long time, and then the additional age 65 that was passed with the OBBB, you're going to be up to $47,500 as a standard deduction for 2026.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a pretty hefty standard. It's, I think it's a little over $1,000 more than it'd be this year.
Right.
But, that's not nothing. And you pair that with the fact that most of the brackets are raising by a couple $1,000s or so. And, I think that's something to keep in mind. We're still in a very favorable tax environment. Even the capital gains bracket, the 0% capital gains bracket is increasing by a couple $1,000s. So that's why I think it's just good to be working with someone and kind of understand year over year where everything is.
Mhm.
Because, I was having a conversation with someone recently and they were talking about what they did for a Roth conversion strategy. And the initial strategy, I think they had maybe talked to somebody in the past and they kind of had some blueprint in their mind and they were like, we're just going to do this dollar amount every single year, whatever that was,
Right.
50,000, 100,000, doesn't really matter. And on paper, if you look at that today, yeah, that looks fine, maybe for them. But if you're saying do that every year for 5, 6, 7 years, a lot of things are going to change in those 4, 5, 6, 7 years. For one thing, there's a good chance you might see some actual law changes in that time of like we saw a couple months ago. Those things can happen. You can't really predict that.
Right.
But you're also just going to see these little inflation adjustments over time. And like I said, if your other income isn't really increasing or if it decreases at some point. So anyway, all that to say, what ended up happening with them is, the first couple of years it worked out kind of okay. And then they started hitting IRMA. They started hitting, the Medicare adjustment and paying more in Medicare. And they didn't really know why. And that's because they were doing the same amount every year and some of their other income had grown a little bit. And that kind of led to them just going over. And one of those things that's saying, hey, if talk to somebody, that probably could have been avoided by saying, hey, let's look at all your income before we process something like this, kind of see where the brackets are, see where those different bands are, and what all that looks like. So I just think it's important to keep in mind, again, like I said, a couple $1,000 extra in the 24, the 22 isn't really going to change anybody's life, but it's just good to be aware of where everything is moving. What you're going to get is the standard, taking advantage of this while you can, looking at all those strategies. And then the last thing I'll mention is we have not seen the new limits come out for like 401k contributions, Roth IRA contributions yet. That probably will be coming sometime in the next few months. But right now, the projections are that you'll probably see around a $500 raise to the Roth IRA contribution limit. And maybe 1,000 or 1,500 coming to the 401k. So we'll have to see about that one. That one's just kind of hearsay. I'm seeing of people trying to do the IRS calculations, but we'll update once that comes around. But anyway, that first round kind of came out, and just kind of wanted to make everybody aware of that.
I love it. Thank you for that update. I love that so much. Great information there. And if you have questions about tax brackets and any questions about taxes, again, this is what's part of the, Rite retirement process. So they will take you through that when you go in and see them at WG Financial Group. So again, our number, call or text the word visit 256-937-2010. They would love to guide you. And I'm Luann Fulmer here with Graham Bauer. And I want to get into now the fact that this month is Financial Planning Month. I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about this and bring this up, because on our show, we always talk about retirement planning. All of us spend our lifetime, building wealth, and now we have to try to preserve it once we head into retirement. So Graham, tell us, when we do say financial planning, what does that really mean for retirees, please?
I think if I could, sum it up very, very simply, financial planning is really knowing how to get your money to work for you in all facets, whether that's in taxes and investments and, just where to be placing money or where to be pulling money out of. It can go both ways. And also, understanding how to protect yourself and your family. So I think it's twofold, knowing how to make your money work for you and also how to protect yourself and your family. I was having a meeting with somebody not too long ago, and one thing that he kind of mentioned earlier on in the meeting, and this is something that we hear from time to time. We honestly don't hear it a ton just because of the nature of, I think just the nature of how we do our show and everything. People kind of know that we're a little bit more holistic, but he kind of said something to the effect of, maybe we don't really need to talk about this, that, or the other. I think I kind of have the financial planning part of things, squared away. I'm just kind of interested in what do I do with these investments over here. And we'll hear that from time to time. And so, we kind of pivoted a little bit to talking a little bit more about that, but still like to keep on our normal process to a certain extent. And, by the end of the conversation, there were actually quite a bit of little action items. Not that he was doing a bad job or anything like that, but a couple little things that it was like, hey, did you know about this? Did you know about this? Did you know about this? And, I'm not going to say that was totally converted him from a, do-it-yourselfer to a doubting yourselfer, as we've talked about before. But I think that sometimes people look at financial planning and they maybe say, okay, well, what does a financial planner really do? They build a budget for you. They tell you to invest in the S&P 500 until you're 60, and then, put some bonds in there. And then, they tell you to go get your will. And, all of those things have a level of truth to them. But I don't think that is what a good planner is doing and what a good financial plan is doing, in a vacuum by itself. I think that if you really have a financial plan, you not only understand, where you should be saving money and where you should be pulling money out of, which is important, but you also understand, how it's going to affect your tax situation. You also understand what an inheritance will do to your kids and grandkids, meaning from a tax perspective, from a withdrawal perspective, from a probate perspective. And, you just understand basically where you're headed financially, and feel confident in that. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of questions that we get, commonly all the time. And I think sometimes people just want very simplistic answers, like a question like, do I have enough to retire? And for a lot of people, most people that come into the office, I would say the answer is yes. I think if you're somebody that is sitting out there and you got, high 6 figures, 7 figures in your retirement accounts and you worked into your 60s, yeah, you're probably not going to run out of money in retirement. And you probably don't need to pay a planner to tell you that. You can probably kind of do that math on your own. But again, where should you be withdrawing money from? How does that affect your tax situation? What's the impact of RMDs? How should you do your charitable giving? Is your spouse protected, or your kids and grandkids legacy set up? There's a lot of other things that go into it. So I think, like we've said many times, I think looking at the holistic approach is just a lot more valuable for people. And, hopefully we can be able to show people some things that they wouldn't have thought of, or, help out in some other areas that are different than just, add some more bonds to your 401k.
Exactly. Now, I want to ask you this. Does retirement planning look different for people who have actually a lot of money saved, or is there something else they should consider?
It does look a lot different, I would say.
Okay.
Kind of like I alluded to on just a minute ago. There are some people that come in and, they have saved really well, and they still really want that question answered of, can I retire?
Yeah.
Do I have enough to retire?
Right.
I had one client who wanted me to print out all of the simulations that we run. And he was like, I'm going to put it on my car dashboard and, look at that every day before I go into work. And some people really need that reassurance, even if they've saved really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into, a certain echelon, I think even if you're being coy about it, you probably understand that, in order to have a lot of money, for most people, that usually means you're at least good at not spending everything that you bring in.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people out there that are, high net worth, ultra high net worth, most of them didn't get there by living insanely over the top lifestyles that are going to be impossible to support in retirement.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up kind of, with most people, especially people in that, low to mid 7 figures range, kind of saying, hey, you did a great job saving. You've set yourself up for a really comfortable retirement. But we got to figure out, do you want to spend this? Do you want to give this? Do you want to have this be an inheritance? What is the plan for this money? What's the purpose of this money? Because for a lot of people, they probably have a little bit more than they thought they would, and probably more than they need from a lifestyle standpoint. But that doesn't mean they can't use it to, improve their lives, the lives of family, or, work on that legacy plan, giving plan, those types of things. So that's kind of part one of it. And then part two is certainly the tax side of things, because, you have a great problem. And I always say to people, you have a great problem. You have a problem that I wish everybody had, which is, you saved super well. And now we got to look at the tax impact. So I think those are kind of the two main things that really are going to affect people that have done a great job saving, and that they'll need to be thinking about. So if we've touched on anything that you want to come into the office and talk about a little bit more, get started on our Rite Retirement process, you can give us a call at 256-937-2010. Again, that number is 256-937-2010. If you're listening on your way to church, you can hop over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, look for the Rite Retirement Show, and we'll upload the full episode there as well, so you can hear the second segment.
Market fluctuations can be unsettling, but a resilient plan can help maintain stability. Discuss how you might fortify your retirement strategy with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010 today to begin. Remember, text VISIT to 256-937-2010.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
If lingering doubts like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement funds endure? Are on your mind, it's time to consult with Cris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's 256-937-2010 to book your appointment and get the answers you need.
Yes, and we are so thankful and happy and pleased that you are joining us today, spending part of your Sunday with us. I'm Luann Fulmer, today here with Graham Bauer. He is a certified financial planner, financial advisor at WG Financial Group. And of course, Cris Wallace, normally on our show, has the day off. I know he's not actually off, right, Graham?
Nope.
I know he's busy, so that's
no.
The
He's
good
actually.
thing.
Hey,
Yeah.
well, maybe this is a good time to mention this. He's actually teaching a lunch and learn today.
Oh, he
So
is.
If
Well,
you are an employer
Aw.
and you are looking for someone to come in, give some good advice to employees, provide lunch totally for free, you can reach out to us because that is something we do. But that's what he's out doing today. So
that is so cool.
he's not chilling at the lake or
No,
anything
I
like
knew
that.
that.
He's working hard.
Okay, so let me make sure you understand if you are the owner, president, HR manager of a business. Cris would welcome the opportunity to hold this lunch and learn for your employees. He'd come to you, your business right here in the Huntsville area, and talk to your employers about, or employees I should say, about retirement saving, go through some of those complex terms, make sure that they can get on that path to a successful retirement. So make sure you just call us 256-937-2010 to schedule a complimentary lunch and learn for your employees. I'm Luann Fulmer. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. This is the Rite Retirement Show. I'm Luann Fulmer. And all right, Graham, let's get into this reality check. It might surprise a lot of people when they hear this. The average American believes they're going to need well over $1 million to retire comfortably, yet most have saved less than a tenth of that amount. The old retirement playbook was work till you're 65, collect a pension, coast for 60 years, live a good life. However, something that simple does not exist anymore. So tell us, Graham, what's really changed about retirement planning and why are those traditional approaches leaving so many people feeling vulnerable?
Yeah, it's a different world, as you know, Luann. It's a different world than a lot of people obviously grew up in and through their working years, and a lot of things have changed. I mean, even just talking to someone here recently who was a longtime employee of a bigger military contractor company in the Huntsville area. And, they were talking about they kind of just missed the boat, even still on the pension plan. And they worked for him for, quite a long time. Not saying that, that hasn't ruined them or anything, but even people nowadays who have worked for a company for many, many years, a lot of times are still kind of post 401k revolution. So that is one area for sure, is kind of the lack of guaranteed income sources that the people have coming in. I've obviously told the story a few times, but my grandfather was a teacher. He hit his retirement deadline, went out and had a pension, and then eventually collected Social Security and was able to make it for like 40 years in retirement, 30 some years, almost 40, I think.
Yeah.
So, it helps out a lot to have that stable income source. Not saying that people can't do it, but it just puts a lot more responsibility on the individual and kind of on your investments, making sure that you maybe have even an extra layer of protection and understanding than you needed to previously. People are also living a lot longer.
Mhm.
One of my favorite stats to throw out to people is that if you make it to 65 years old as a female, you have a 50-50 chance to make it to 90.
Well, that's me.
So
50-50.
yeah.
Okay.
So you're 50-50 at this point, Luann.
Yeah.
I hope you
Wow.
make it to 90. You'll
Thank
still
you.
be doing the show, right? at
Yes, I
90?
will. I'll still
Okay.
be doing the show. I might have a hearing aid.
Yeah, it'll be like, what?
What do you guys say?
No, I hope
that's
I hope
crazy.
you ride off into the sunset
Thank
before then, and you're not we're not still dragging you to our recording sessions. But, I think that's an important thing to think about. And for a man, if you make it to 65, I think it's like a 40% chance. So not quite as good, but, it's still, I think, a pretty high chance because what we see a ton all the time is that when we tell someone, we're going to run out any simulation, any projection to your early to mid 90s. Most of the time, either one or both, usually the guy kind of laughs at that and is like, there's absolutely no way that I'm making it to 90.
Wow.
I'm out at 65, I'm going to retire and 5 days later, heart attack in the recliner. That's how a lot of people think. But, statistics would tell you that if you're a 65-year-old male today or a 65-year-old female, you got a 40-50% chance to make it to 90. So, that's a 25-year time span.
Yes.
25 years to make your money last, 25 years to, be living on without a work paycheck. It's a long time. Like we've talked about before, when Social Security was set up, it wasn't really set up with the intention that people would retire at 62 or 65 and then live for another 30 years. It was kind of like, they'll be out in a few years, just
Right.
kind of pay out for a couple. So it's definitely a different world. But again, I think that's just why it's maybe a little bit more complicated than it was in the past. I think if we all just had pensions and a little bit of investments in Social Security, it'd be pretty simple.
Yeah.
But that's just not the reality for at least a lot of Americans nowadays.
Yeah, it's so crazy, that with our lifespans extended longer, that things didn't change with Congress, with our laws about Social Security. I mean, duh, it only makes sense. Things should have changed instead of them robbing it. And now we're in a scary position,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's kind of been like an asteroid slowly coming towards Earth, and we're kind of like, we can see it there.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of far out, so we don't need to do anything just yet.
Exactly.
It's kind of been their posture. But just out of curiosity, Luann, did your parents, did they have pensions? Do you know?
My dad did. He was an educator as well.
Okay.
Like your
he was a
grandfather.
teacher?
Yep. He was a principal.
Oh, okay.
Teacher
Awesome.
principal in an elementary, school. And so, he had a nice pension. My mother did not, she would have just collected Social Security. She was mostly, she would do secretarial work here and there, but nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But my dad had a pretty dang good pension, all the way up. The only thing was he got a little worried about long-term care when my mother went in a nursing home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he was kind of like, oh, whoa, I need to do something. And so he did take insurance out for a nursing home and he used it. He did use it. But, I don't know if that was a good idea at the time, but my dad was doing it all alone,
That's a good point. And not to derail us too much, but you can also, I would say, get a little bit on the flip side of this, where if you only have income and no assets, you also present yourself with a little bit of an issue there.
Yes.
I was having a conversation, and I've had a lot of conversations with people who, but this couple in particular had a ton of retirement income.
Wow.
Like some of the most I've ever seen. Great for
Wow.
them, just coming in from pensions and everything.
Right.
And sort of the conversation we had was, you could spend some of your assets as well if you needed to, as part of your retirement plan. Not necessarily saying you can't do that, but if something happens to one of you, like one of you passes away, or B, one of you or both of you end up going into a long-term care facility, have any major health problems that last a very long time, then in some ways these assets on the side are kind of your insurance policy.
Yes.
'Cause once you get to a certain point, at least ourselves in the office, if you're in your late 60s, early 70s, in my opinion, you're too late on the long-term care life insurance side
Okay.
of things. You're just going to be paying like crazy.
Uh-huh.
But if you're somebody who has a ton of income and maybe didn't build up the assets quite as well as the income sources, you can kind of look at that as saying, hey, maybe this is just money that we don't touch quite so much, and we maybe invest it a little bit more aggressively because it's a little bit more long term, and say, let's just let this grow. And if something does happen to us in 10, 15 years, then we can supplement that loss of income with the investments, rather than getting to a point where you're used to a lifestyle where you got pensions on both sides, Social Security on both sides, and then you got investment withdrawals as well coming out. And then somebody passes away, and all of a sudden you can't supplement all that income you lost just with withdrawals. Because I mean, even in the best case scenario, wow, okay, maybe not best case, because there are some pensions that have 100% survivor, but I'm going to just go with like federal employees. Max survivor is 50%.
Right.
So if you have 2 federal employees, you both, federal government, and, same with military, you can't get 100%. Military either. So for both of those, if you're military pension, federal pension, disability, like VA disability, all those types of things, you're going to lose some or all of it if somebody passes away. And Social Security, you're keeping the higher of the two. So if you have a lot of income, that's great, but you're also at risk of losing a lot of income if one of you passes away, if you're a married couple, and then kind of needing to supplement that. So again, I'm not, obviously, pensions are talked about with a lot of reverence, and they are great, and they were great. And there's a lot of value there, but you don't want to be too one-sided on either way. I think the most ideal retirements I've ever seen are people that have pensions, but that didn't stop them from prioritizing savings as well.
Wow.
And, that really helps you kind of protect yourself from multiple angles.
Right. Wow, they did such a good job. But, studies are showing, and we talk about this all the time, people are fearing outliving their savings more than dying. Okay. So, that there is a lot of retirement anxiety going on here when you look at the retirement world, which is what we focus on all the time. You want to talk about some of the practical strategies that you guys use to help people, transform their fears into confidence, and that they can, okay, I'm going to be okay. I can spend my money. I don't have to just sit here and sit at home and, never go out to eat and not do anything fun because I'm worried about my money running out.
Yeah, I think one of the best things to do, if you're somebody that you think you did a good job saving, but you're not really sure and you're kind of nervous about, taking money out and, spending your money in retirement, I think that it can be really helpful to just look at some practical situations, data-driven, kind of even simulations of saying, hey, what would it look like if we spent this much money per month? Then what would it look like if we spent this much money and market performance wasn't great? And what would it look like if we spent this much money and market performance wasn't great and Social Security cost of living adjustments kind of went lower than we expected them to? And, maybe what if we spent this much money and all of that happened and there was a recession the first year of our retirement?
Oh my
and
gosh.
we can get, get really worst case. And we had a long-term care event on the back end, all of those types of things, and say, what is it going to take to sink this? And if the answer is it takes a lot, then I wouldn't be one to bet on the incredibly unlikely. So if you think it's going to take a long-term care event, a recession first year of your retirement, below average market performance, and cuts to Social Security to run you out of money, then you're probably not going to run out of money. Because that's not, if we were setting up like a retirement, what do they call them? Parlay bets, where there's like, that would be a very low odds.
Yeah. Worst case scenario. Yeah.
So I think it can be helpful to, for some people at least, to look at those types of things and say, hey, this is what the numbers are telling us. That's not to say that things can't be even more worst case scenario, but sometimes people just are like, I want to see it if Social Security goes away completely, the stock market completely tanks, and the world blows up. And it's like, okay, well at that point,
you may not need your money.
Yeah, you might not need your money.
You could be in heaven.
But so you don't want to go on the extreme worst case, because of course, if I just, set an inflation rate at 15% a year and say you get no return and Social Security goes away, no one's able to retire. Newsflash. At that point, no one is retired. But you can look at some practical, realistic worst case scenarios and kind of say, hey, what would happen if X, Y, or Z happened? I just out of curiosity, Luann, like if you're looking for it, I know you're not retired yet. I'm not trying to rush you, but what is like in the sphere of, inflation, running out of money? Is that something that you guys kind of worry about at this point in life?
Well, yeah, because so we want to pretty much die with zero. We've decided because my son is a doctor and my daughter and her husband, he's a pilot. So they're set. They are not going to need our money. And because we started saving so late at age 50, but we are debt free now and we are, but my fear is running out of money. Is that enough? Should we do more before each of us retires?
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, you're totally not alone in that. And it's at the end of the day, I think the answer to the question is just, and you've heard this a million times, but always just going to come down to, what your lifestyle looks like.
Yeah.
But no, I love the burn down kind of approach of saying, let's spend it all. And you're right. You did a good job raising them and they got good jobs.
They're on their own. And I'm not going to worry about the grandkids because my kids can take care of their kids. So
yeah.
But this way, we'll spend money on them while we're alive.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And, I'm sure you guys helped. Well, obviously, parenting them helped them out a ton early in life.
Through college. We helped them through college. We did all that.
That's invaluable, for all that stuff. But I think, honestly, not enough people think that way. There's definitely, especially if you're like you guys and your kids are doing really well for themselves, to kind of say, hey, unless we really want to leave an inheritance, maybe we need to not think so much about, what if there's a bunch of money left over at the end of the plan. Sometimes we'll run out of plan and there's like, someone is like, I don't want to spend any of my money.
Yeah.
I'm nervous, but then they also are like, well, I don't really care about leaving any to, the kids or grandkids. They're doing fine on their own.
Right.
And it's like, well, at this pace, you're going to leave them $1 million.
Right.
Oh, well,
that's kind of a lot, right?
Yeah. Maybe we could do this, that, or the other.
Right.
So, it can be helpful to just kind of to see some data sometimes and, not just have to go on feelings.
Yes. And I do love that you can set up every single different scenario you can think of and help someone's, calm their nerves and go, okay. I guess we can spend a little more, so I love that.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Graham, you've mentioned, not putting all your eggs in the stock market basket. Okay. Many people have their entire retirement riding on their 401k performance, and that can be terrifying during market downturns. So I want you to explain a diversified retirement income strategy, what that looks like, why it is so important to keep that confidence.
So, when you're talking about diversification and retirement, I think one of the best strategies to use that we've talked about before, and one of my personal favorites, is kind of looking at like a bucket approach.
Yeah.
And as in having different buckets of money that have kind of a different purpose. You could also call it, I don't know, I think sometimes maybe, I don't refer to it like this, but when I talk about it with clients, I probably more talk about it being like a purpose approach. Like, what is the purpose for this money? So if you're looking at, let's take a couple different types of accounts, for example. Let's say you have a IRA, a Roth IRA. So when I say IRA, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, and like a brokerage, non-retirement investment account.
Okay.
All three of those accounts might have slightly different purposes to them. They're different buckets of money. They're all part of your portfolio, but there might be a different purpose to each pot of money there. For example, if the stock market, let's say we had another great year and it goes up 20%, out of those three accounts, what account would you want to see that growth in more than the others? You'd want to see it in the Roth IRA, right? It's tax-free growth. That compounding tax-free is great. You wouldn't care quite as much to see it in the traditional IRA. You want to see that grow still. But if, that was a little bit more conservative and the Roth was a little bit more aggressive and you still kept within your risk tolerance, you'd rather see that growth in your Roth. So I think for some people, you're talking early in retirement, you're trying to decide, where do I pull money out of? Where do I kind of place my safer investments? Where do I place my riskier investments? You got to look at a lot of different things. You got to look at, where you're taking money from. So obviously, do I want to pull out some more taxable money now while brackets are lower? Do I want to spend down some cash, and do I want to convert? And there's a lot of different options there. But I think truly diversified, when you're talking about an income strategy, when you're talking about investment strategy, is really going to be a mix of the investments. That is an important part of it, but also the tax impacts of all those different investments and of the income that you take. So I think you got to look at all of those different things. And, I think when somebody initially retires, one of the things that we really work on is, getting that initial income strategy set up. I don't like for anybody to have their last day at work and not know like literally what accounts and how much money each month is going to be coming out of them if there are going to be withdrawals. I think it's way better to say, hey, I'm a month out, but I know that at the end of that month, that's going to stop, but I'm going to be getting this amount from Social Security. My IRA is going to be this much a month that's coming out, and we're withholding this much for taxes, and this much is coming out of my brokerage account, and all that stuff. So I think that it's just good to know what you're doing going into it, understanding where your money's coming from, what the impacts of that are, and changing that year by year. Because like we talked about earlier, there are law changes. This year we're getting that extra senior deduction for a few years.
Yeah.
So also you got to be flexible. So, reevaluating that, having a plan, and changing it as the environment changes.
And this goes along with what I'm about to ask you next. The research shows that people who are working with a financial advisor have more than double their retirement savings than those people going it alone. So for people wondering if they are on track, or maybe they need to make adjustments and they're wondering about what they should do, talk about that and the kind of retirement readiness assessment you guys provide for potential retirees.
So our process, as we've mentioned before, and as the name of the show might indicate, is called the Rite Retirement Income Process. And that's an acronym. So the R stands for retirement income, the I stands for investments, the T stands for taxes, and the E stands for estate planning. So we actually have a report card that we score people on in all of those different categories. And the way it's set up is not to tell you, that you're failing retirement. We don't give you an F and say work 10 more years and, no explanation.
Too bad. Yeah.
Yes. The goal is really to show you the things that you're doing well, the things that are, good about your retirement as far as, for example, do you have a lot of income compared to expenses? That's a good thing. We'd mark that green. And some of the places where there might be some opportunities. Are you missing an opportunity to save on some taxes here? Are you missing on an opportunity to make a contribution here? So, on the retirement income part, we're looking at what are your expenses? What are your income? How much of that is it going to cover? And, investments, we're looking at what is your mix versus what you think it is. So for some people, they'll come in initially and they'll be like, I'm conservative, as an investment wise.
Yeah.
And then you look at their portfolio and they got, 75% stock in there. And it's like, okay, well, you might feel conservative, but you're not investing conservative. And so the question then becomes, do we need to be investing conservative, or are you actually maybe a little bit more comfortable with risk than you thought? And also looking at things like fund fees, making sure you're not paying way more than you should for similar types of investments that would be a little bit cheaper. And then on to taxes. Looking at, do you have the ability to make extra contributions? How are you doing your charitable giving? Those types of things. And then estate planning, is your estate plan in place? Special needs beneficiaries, life insurance in place, all of those different types of things. And that's more so on the family protection side of things. So we're looking at all of those different elements to kind of give people an idea of where there's opportunity and where we can help out in retirement. And for some people, I'll say there's the occasional person that comes in, they're doing a great job, and it doesn't necessarily mark a ton of stuff, saying that that's an opportunity. But for most people, there's going to be a couple things at least that you'll say, oh, maybe I didn't know about that, or maybe I should be doing that for a couple of years. So again, it's not about retirement isn't pass fail or anything like that. But, we like to give people that report card to just kind of say, here's what you're doing great. Here's what can be improved upon. And it's a really nice, just simple way to kind of look at, to just get a high level view of everything retirement related.
Wow. Great Great stuff here, Graham. We always appreciate your viewpoints here. And, many listeners probably have someone who prepares their tax return each year. But I want to mention there is a big difference when you look backward at last year's tax strategies and then you're strategically planning to help minimize taxes over the next 20 or 30 years of retirement. So I want you to explain this distinction here. Walk us through what you guys do with your clients to develop a long-term tax strategy.
Yeah, so similar to, what we're kind of looking at on that report card, that's not the only look at taxes that we do when somebody comes into the office and kind of goes through our process. That's kind of part one, to maybe take a high level view of like, here's just a couple very quick opportunities, things you might know about, things you might not know about. The second part of that is saying, okay, now that we kind of have that squared away, some opportunities that there are today, what are we going to be looking at for, like you said, the next 20 or 30 years of taxes and retirement? So a big component of that, for one, is conversions. That's a huge component of it, especially for people that are retiring a little bit younger or people with a lot of built up pre-tax balance. The brackets are historically low right now. Mm-hmm. And so we want to look at, for everybody that comes in and is in a situation where it's advantageous, what would a strategy, a conversion strategy of converting some IRA money to Roth over a period of time, what would that look like? What would the potential savings be? What would be the pros of doing that? What would be the cons of doing that? Because just like any decision, it's not a one size fits all. Some people see the data and they're still like, I don't want to do that. Another component to that is maybe like, what is your giving strategy going to look like over the next 10, 15, 20 years? Are we going to be gifting cash? Are we itemizing? Are we going to be gifting stock? Are we going to be doing qualified charitable distributions? Are we, really big time givers and we need to look at trusts and foundations and donor advised funds and all of those types of slightly more complicated vehicles? So there's a lot of different things that go into that. But what it's really looking at on the back end there is, how can we tailor a tax strategy to your plan, to your situation, and not just say, hey, here's the things that everybody does, you need to do these too, but say, how does this fit into your lifestyle, into your financial situation, and how you're spending money already and giving money already.
So as we wrap up here, between market losses hitting at the worst possible moment and then taxes taking a bigger bite than people are expecting, retirees are facing a lot of threats that could lead to running short of money later in life. So again, just tell us what people can do to ensure their money is going to last as long as they need it to.
Yeah, if you haven't gotten it by now, I think having a plan is the way to do it. And to understand, like I said, what does financial planning look like? It's how to put your money to work for you, and also, understanding, opportunities that you have and all of that good stuff. So I really think it's very beneficial for people to, especially in that early retirement space, to say, I know where I'm getting my money from. I know what my tax strategy is long-term. I know what I can spend every month, and I know that I'm probably not going to run out of money, all things considered. So if you are somebody that's listening to the show and you want to come in and sit down and have a discovery session, go through that Rite Retirement process, you can give us a call at 256-937-2010. Again, that number is 256-937-2010. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA. Neither AEWM nor advisors providing investment advisory services through AEWM recommend or facilitate the buying or selling of precious metals.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.